What would you do if you were bleeding for 12 years? With no cure, no money, and no one willing to touch you? What if society called you unclean but heaven called you worthy? This is the powerful story of the woman with the issue of blood, a nameless figure who made history with one bold touch. Her story is more than a miracle. It's a masterclass in faith, resilience, and divine timing. We meet her in Mark 5 verses 25 to 34. She had been bleeding for 12 years, non-stop. In today's medical terms, it could have been a condition like menorrhagia or a uterine disorder. But in ancient Jewish culture, her condition made her ritually unclean. According to Leviticus 15 verses 25 to 30, it reads, "When a woman has a discharge of blood for many days at a time other than her monthly period or has a discharge that continues beyond her period, she will be unclean as long as she has the discharge, just as in the days of her period. Any bed she lies on while her discharge continues will be unclean, as is her bed during her monthly period, and anything she sits on will be unclean as during her period. Anyone who touches them will be unclean. They must wash their clothes and bathe with water, and they will be unclean till evening. When she is cleansed from her discharge, she must count off 7 days, and after that she will be ceremonially clean. On the 8th day she must take 2 doves or 2 young pigeons and bring them to the priest at the entrance to the tent of meeting. The priest is to sacrifice one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. In this way he will make atonement for her before the Lord for the uncleanness of her discharge. In summary, anything or anyone she touched became unclean. That meant no hugs, no temple worship, no community life. She was isolated, invisible, and likely homeless. In the first century there was no real cure. She likely spent her money on ancient remedies, herbs, rituals, physicians, and got worse. Not all suffering is visible. Sometimes the worst pain is the one we carry in silence. Then she heard about Jesus, the healer, the teacher, the one who touched lepers and talked to sinners. As Jesus passed through a crowded street, she broke every law and norm by pressing through the people. Weak, trembling, likely covered to hide her identity, she reached for the edge of his robe. In Jewish tradition, the fringes of a rabbi's garment called tzitzit represented God's commandments and authority. She didn't need a handshake or a sermon. She just wanted to touch the hem. Some rabbis taught that the Messiah would have healing in his wings, a poetic reference to the corners of his garment. She was acting on faith, not superstition. Faith doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just reaches. The moment her fingers brushed the hem, she felt it. Healing surged through her body. For the first time in 12 years, the bleeding stopped. Jesus stopped too. "Who touched me?" he asked. His disciples were confused. It was a crowd. But Jesus knew that power had gone out from him. The woman, terrified, came forward and fell at his feet. She confessed everything. And Jesus, calm, compassionate, looked at her and said, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." This is the only place in the Gospels where Jesus calls someone daughter. In one word, he restored her body, her dignity, and her identity. God doesn't just heal the body. He restores the soul. In her time, she broke every rule. She touched people, a rabbi, and entered a public space while unclean. That could have gotten her punished or worse. But Jesus didn't rebuke her. He honored her. Women in the first century Jewish world had few rights, especially if labeled impure. But Jesus' ministry constantly elevated women. The Samaritan at the well, Mary Magdalene, and this unnamed woman. Here's the twist. This miracle happened on the way to another. Jairus, a synagogue leader, had asked Jesus to heal his dying daughter. This delay, caused by an outcast woman, seemed inconvenient. Yet it was divinely appointed. While Jesus was healing the woman, Jairus' servants came with news. "Your daughter is dead." But Jesus told him, "Don't be afraid. Just believe." He then raised the girl from the dead. God can handle your emergency while blessing someone else. His power isn't limited by time or need. Delays aren't denials. Sometimes someone else's miracle is part of yours. We never learn her name, but her story is preached worldwide. In art, sermons, songs, and testimonies, her moment of faith became a ripple across history. Her story teaches us that miracles don't require platforms, just faith. She reminds us that God sees the invisible, touches the untouchable, and honors the unnoticed. Some early Christian traditions believed she later became a follower of Jesus and helped spread the gospel. Whether or not that's true, her one act of courage still speaks. You may feel small, forgotten, or ashamed, but one moment of faith can rewrite your entire story. Why this is so powerful? In her time, her suffering was physical, social, and spiritual. The law isolated her, but Jesus included her. She represents the unseen, the unclean, the unworthy, and how God sees and heals them anyway. A turning point where grace overrides exclusion. A message that your faith, not your status, makes you whole. The woman with the issue of blood didn't just get healed. She got restored. Her story reminds us that healing often comes when we stop waiting for perfect conditions and simply reach out. Through pain, shame, and isolation, she found a Savior who didn't just heal her, but called her daughter. So if you're bleeding, physically, emotionally, spiritually, reach for the hem. You don't have to shout. Just reach. Because when your faith touches His grace, everything changes. And the best part? He's still walking by.